Hello and welcome to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are certainly glad you have joined us. I'm Mark Sandlin. I'm here with my good buddy Caleb Lyons. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great for a Monday. How about yourself, Mark?
Any Monday while I'm around doing the Moonshine Jesus Show is a great Monday. So that's the way I see it. Anyway, hey, listen, we want to encourage you all. We are presented by progressivechristianity.org. Please go check out everything that's offered there. There's all kinds of great progressive Christian writings as well as liturgies and other things that you will find useful, I promise you. Also, make sure to check out our show, The Moonshine Jesus Show, on Facebook. Follow us there. You'll learn more about us, and we'll be interacting with you there as well. So make sure you take the opportunity to do that. Now, there is a very important thing that we must do now.
Absolutely.
We are going to be talking about Star Trek. And I must let you know. You hear this?
You've got it, kid. Red alert!
Red alert! Red alert! Spoiler alert ahead. There are spoilers ahead, so please don't be surprised. It's still going off.
It's
got to
still
get out
red
of this
alert.
loop.
Cancel
We've got to get out of this loop. So, this is always a spoiler-full, not spoiler-free show. So be sure that you're aware of that as we head into this. So, Caleb, we start with our drinks. I assume that you have some kind of a creative Star Trek themed drink.
I do have a Star Trek themed drink. It's not overly creative this week, I must confess, Mark. So there are sites where you can find tons of Star Trek themed drinks. And so I've got one called the Vulcan Mind Probe, because we're talking about Strange New Worlds today, and Spock is one of the folks who is, who is in this. And so the Vulcan Mind Probe is a very simple drink. It's 1 1/4 ounce of vodka and 3/4 ounce of blue curacao. So just a Vulcan Mind Probe. So I'm trying to mind probe you, Mark, to determine what you might drink. Well, I don't know, but does it have bourbon?
It does not. I threw a curveball at you.
I got to drink some more of this. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. So listen, the new Captain Pike, and he's not really new, but he's new in terms of leading a series. He's already possibly my new favorite captain. So I tried to hit my hair up as high as it would go. I just am not working with what he's working with.
It's hard to get that height, man.
Yeah, it's just not, I don't
looks
have
good though. It looks good.
I don't have all the things he has to work with up there. I'm just trying to keep what little is there.
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. But anyway, so in the first episode, he has Spock in his room, and he offers him a Saurian brandy. So I have here in my, first of all, Star Trek Discovery glass. I've got a Saurian ale. It is pretty simple as well. You basically take vodka and then you put some orange pills in it and let it set overnight. And then you add sugar and maple syrup. I will tell you this. I advise taking you can find this recipe online everywhere. I advise taking about half the sugar and half the maple syrup, because
sounds very sweet.
I used half of what they recommended, and honestly, while it's good, it is too sweet. But it's not bad at all. Cheers, sir.
Hey, cheers to you, Mark. Cheers to all of you out there watching.
Looking forward to the show and geeking out a little bit about this great new Star Trek addition to the Star Trek franchise.
Let's do it.
Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus. Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show, where today we are talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It is the new streaming series in the ever-expanding universe of Star Trek shows on Paramount Plus, and I think a pretty good one. It follows Captain Pike and the crew of the USS Enterprise as a prequel to Star Trek, the original series, and a lot of fans are saying that this is back to exactly what a Star Trek show ought to be, which I suppose is partly meaningless pseudoscience techno jargon, a bit of heavy-handed moralizing, and some regulations be damned attitude, which I'll admit is exactly what I kind of want in a Star Trek show. I really have enjoyed this, and I think for the most part, we're only 3 episodes in. They've only dropped 3 episodes, but I think that even though it is a prequel, they've done a pretty good job of handling it. Although there are some things that come with prequels, like muddying of waters and things like that. That I do
hard
think
not to
that
hard not to step on canon sometimes.
It is very hard, and if you are a Trekkie, and I know Mark and I are both kind of Trekkies, that can be hard, and those can be tough waters to navigate. What's your take on the show, Mark? How do you like it so far?
I have to say, I do like it. I do feel like it's old school Star Trek, particularly the original series. You mentioned it's a prequel. I mean, it's kind of cool because I can't think of another show that's both a prequel and a spinoff. So it's a spinoff of Discovery. These characters, some of the main characters were introduced to a Discovery, and it's a spinoff. I mean, it's a prequel, as you mentioned, the original series. So I think that, that's a lot to take on with such a big franchise that is so heavily thought of, and the fans, as you were pointing out, can get a little worked up if things aren't exactly the way they should be.
Star Trek fans do not do that.
You're right. I was thinking of Star Wars fans. There's no way it would be Star Trek fans.
Never.
So I have to say, I like this show. I like that they've gone back. The last few iterations of Star Trek have been more of your serialized storytelling with sort of season arches that are primary. I like this more episodic. I like the way it feels more like the original series. Certainly makes it easier to deal specifically with like really particular issues and morals. Whereas if you get this long story arch where the end of it is down the road, so you have to take these little moments to do small little lessons about more the outlooks and what you're looking for. So I like that about it. I like that it allows it to be more of a parable and not so much just this giant epic story. And I love that it's that style seems, at least so far, going to allow them to go more specific with characters. Like we got a kind of Uhura show already. Whereas in things like Discovery, when you've got these long story arches, well, the few people who are the main people in those story arches are going to mostly be the main people in each episode as well. So I kind of like what it's going to do for character building. I mean, I know that I'm a geek about this. So I was kind of predestined to want to, as a Presbyterian, I was predestined to want to like this. Sorry, I had to go there. I don't know. I mean, what was you really like it? You kind of like it? You got issues with it? Where are you on it?
I really like it. Had we talked pre-episode 3, I would have said I love it. One of my problems with prequels in general, especially when we're talking about well-established franchises, is that you're right. It is very hard not to step on canon. And so that's been one of my issues with all these prequels anyway. And I thought that Strange New Worlds has done a pretty good job of actually being a prequel to the original series. One of the things you and I have talked about, I think mostly offline, Mark, but some here, is that one of the things that's irritating is when it's a prequel and the technology is obviously so much more advanced than the show that it's supposed to come before. And so I think that this show, the technology in it, they do a good job of keeping true to the original series while, having some modern updates that we would expect. Some mainly visual updates for how the ship looks and all. But you look at things like the tricorder, their device that they use to get information, and it looks like the tricorder on the original series. So things like that I like. But here's why I say shuttles, shuttles.
Well, they did a great job of those
Mark.
too, updating them. Yeah,
they did. Here's my problem with episode 3. Okay, so we find out that one of the crew members is related to Khan, right?
Exactly.
And Spock is on the ship. So then, when we get to the events of the original series, shouldn't Spock know who Khan is? Right, because it's a big deal. We've got a descendant here who makes a big deal about being a descendant from Khan and genetic engineering and all this. Then when we get to the Kirk's Enterprise and they meet Khan for the first time, it shouldn't be a surprise, right? Maybe they're surprised to meet him, but they shouldn't know who he is.
But hasn't other shows already kind of breached that? I mean, don't we now have this story set up that Khan was, what do you call it? He was frozen to preserve him, and that's how he ends up being, she ends up being the descendant of him, even though he shows back up later in the timeline, obviously not quite old enough to have her to be a descendant at her age. So I kind of feel like they've already, I'm not blaming Strange New Worlds for this. I feel like they've been playing a little loose with that already. I mean, part of that is just that when Roddenberry wrote the original series, he didn't have any clue that there would be all of this follow-up. So he wasn't worried about, the histories of these. And so you've had to kind of go back in and build history into it in places that it wasn't originally intended. I mean, they did some neat stuff with the original pilot and stuff to make it feel like there was history, which led to all of this history building that we now get. So I kind of give them a little pass on that. But there are other things that I should give a pass on that I'm struggling with, man. Maybe you can help me.
Okay.
Since when is there a medical transporter?
So
I mean, how many times would have been great if the hospital area had a transporter? Beam them directly. No, you didn't. Now there's one in there.
That's true.
That shouldn't bother me. I get that, but it does, man.
And with a separate pattern buffer. Right.
Completely.
And that's weird. Like, why is this one system not tied in with the rest of them? And then if it's not tied in with the rest of them, why is it that when that one wasn't updated, even though it's not the one that's being used, why was it that affected like the biofilter on the other one?
I mean, this is you and I being a little too geeky in our geeking out section.
Okay.
So
we're going to back up a little. Mark. We want to know the tech specs of the Enterprise. Okay,
I understand. Right. I understand. I definitely understand. But listen, I'd like to talk about a different thing, and I hinted at it.
There's something else that bothers you. Okay, tell me.
No, I'm going in the opposite direction now. I go in the opposite direction now. It's one of the things I love about the show so far. I like the presentation of the captain. We've seen Pike a few times played by a few actors in other series, and he was a little bit different in those.
He was.
I really like, but the show feels so much like the original series. It's hard not to put Pike beside Kirk and compare the two.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I have really enjoyed the most. Kirk, when it was written, it wasn't something that the world talked about, but, toxic masculinity and male privilege was all piled heavily on him, and he just exuded it. And now we have Pike, who is almost this intentional mirror opposite of him. He is in command, but he's a consensus builder. I loved one of the things that instantly connected it to him was, we see him in episode 1. We first meet him and he's in his kitchen. Episode 2, he gathers the crew in a kitchen, dining area. So there's these strong home hearth family values kind of things going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they even changed the tagline to "We seek out new life. We boldly go." So it has this kind of bringing together. And I really appreciate that. We even see him spending lots of time listening and not just reacting.
Yeah.
I love the episode with the asteroid. He goes, "Anyone want to tell me how a comet can put up a force field?" And then he kind of just throws it out there to everybody. You know, it's not like I'm in charge and I'm going to, he just throws it out in this kind of lighthearted, kind of familiar type of way. And ultimately, I feel like he trades Kirk's bravado for this transparency and this empathy and open-mindedness. And I love that, showing that kind of leadership can happen, particularly with someone suffering from a mental disorder. He has clear issues with PTSD, which we can talk about as well. I kind of love that the show is going in this direction with what leadership can look like, because we've seen so many leaders of, I would say this, Burnham was my favorite. I think Pike's taken over for me already in 3 episodes. I mean, am I off, or do you feel like that they are doing that?
So I think this is one of the powers of Star Trek, is that it is able to deal with the issues at the time. And even though it's set in the future, that's always been the thing that Star Trek is about social commentary. And so that's been some of my frustration with the newer Treks, is that it doesn't really, it feels more like kind of sci-fi action trying to play to that audience, instead of talking about the morals of society, which I think is why, like, as a clergy person, I'm drawn to Star Trek. And as someone who's interested in the well-being of the world, why I've always been drawn to Star Trek. And so I think that, you know, the power of the original series when it was on the 1960s is that, you know, it was very much a product of the 1960s, but it was progressive for its time, and speaking you know, about the issues that were relevant in the day, and even things like seeing the first interracial kiss between Kirk and Uhura in the United States anyway, on Star Trek, even if they were being mind controlled at the time, right? That was the out. Right. But we still saw it. It was a social commentary. Even as we saw people from different nationalities on the bridge, even if they were all really American actors, it was the idea. So it was progressive for the time. And so I think what you're reflecting in Pike here is that we're seeing a captain who is a captain exhibiting leadership like we would like to see today. People who are giving voice to those who might feel voiceless, people who are breaking silence on mental illness, people who are striving to empower others, that those are the kinds of values that we see in good leaders today. And so, of course, we hope that in the future that those are the kinds of values that we see as well. But I think that that's one of the things that's the most important about Star Trek, is that it gives us our social commentary.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it isn't surprising that ministers particularly are attracted to it. Like I mentioned earlier, a good Star Trek episode feels, at least to me, it feels like a parable, which Jesus taught a lot in parables, and so it's natural to be attracted to it, I think, as ministers. And just the idea of a show, I'm glad. I feel like J.J. Abrams was kind of the tipping point, and I'm glad that's sort of a different timeline, but he was kind of the tipping point into making it more of an action-based show.
He absolutely was,
than a relational moral commentary type of thing. So I'm glad to see them finally making the choice to pull back. I've even heard, I can't remember where I read it, that Discovery, whose numbers are starting to falter this season, it's talking about maybe next season being more episodic because of this early success already, which I think would be fantastic. So I tell you what,
right?
We could go on and on. We could literally.
We absolutely could.
I think we could have talked that entire segment about the idea of why a transporter in the medical room needs a buffer of its own, and how that could be a medical necessity, but they haven't thought of it before now. But anyway, we're going to leave that. We'll do, after the show's over, we'll do our own geeking out.
Yeah, that's right. We will just talk about the medical transporter
because it'll be interesting to us and really probably nobody else. But we will do that. But in the meantime, we really appreciate everybody who's tuned in. Continue giving us your thoughts and messages. We are checking out the chats, and we're going to come back in just a minute. And after the break, what we're going to do?
We're going to talk about theology and politics. We've started moving in that direction already, and so I'm excited to get into this a little bit deeper. Let's come back after a drop.
Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, Moonshine Jesus, won't you shine a light?
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show. We are glad that you are still here with us. We're moving into our Theopolitico section. And so I want to start, Caleb, with a very specific, you actually have a little bit of an advantage on me in this question that I'm going to push us towards, in that I know that you good. Yeah. Not fair. It's not fair. I'm doing this to myself. I just want to point out I'm doing this to myself. So I know that you watched episode 3 last night.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. And I watched it the day after it came out. So I'm not, it's not as fresh on my
fresh for me.
mind.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of really interesting things that happen in it. One that almost feels like a secondary story, but ultimately I think becomes one of the main stories, because a lot of this is really, is when number 1 reveals that she is an augment.
Yeah.
And that is a big no-no in the Federation. You don't get to be in or part of, particularly an officer in the Federation, if you are an augment. And she reveals that. And I just remember this moment. And I think this is a great commentary on the world, particularly when it comes to people who are pushed to margins and somehow labeled as unacceptable or whatever. When the captain basically says, you know what? She shares with him that she's an augment and knows and tries to resign. And he says, I'm not going to let you resign. And basically says, because you know what? He all but says, because you're one of the good ones. Like you're exemplary. So of course you get to stay. How much do you think that that's a commentary on the human psyche of how we far too frequently treat folks, that we don't bring in folks that have been marginalized until there's people who have been marginalized who are seen to be exceptional. And then we go, oh, well, okay.
You're okay. Yeah. So his quote is, you defied every stereotype we held about the Illyrians. She reveals that she's an Illyrian. That's her species. And okay, so I think that that's true to how we as human beings typically relate, right? We see people as other when they have differences from us. And the way that we break down that otherness is by relationship. And so that's why relationships are one of the most important things and one of the most theological things that we can engage in, because it is through building those relationships that we begin to see each other as human. And, I think as Christians that we see each other, in the divine image. And so I think that, had let's ask, if Pike had not had this experience of the best first officer in the fleet, as he calls her, I mean, would he have still held his prejudice against the Illyrians? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if he would have or not. I mean, we were certainly having him set up to be the kind of character that wouldn't, but just the language that he used made it sound like, at least right now, that is why he's making this decision. which I both went. There was two sides immediately to me. One was like, I cannot believe this show just said that. And then there was the part of it that went, maybe they're doing it on purpose. Like it's so easy in particularly this style of Star Trek to kind of go with the easy moral or the easy kind of write it real easy. Well, of course we'll accept you because you're great. And isn't that wonderful that we think you're great? But also it was like, maybe this is commentary. And then we get another scene where I think it proves it is commentary. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things I might love the most about this show so far is that it's sort of a self-reflective show. So it made that statement that basically because you're particularly cool and unique, we'll do this. But so number one goes back to her room and does a log entry, and this is what she says. Dr. Mabinga stopped hiding today, and for once I did too. I told Captain Pike the truth about myself, and he defended me. He told me I was exemplary, that he would fight for me. Yeah. So why do I feel terrible? What if I hadn't saved all those lives? Would the captain feel the same? What would he do if I wasn't a hero, one of the good ones? Yeah. Would it be enough for me just to be an Illyrian? I felt like that was one of the moments in this show where I know the third episode made you kind of back off about your love of the show, like how much it is. For me, that I sunk in completely at that point. I was like, this is a show that sees what it's doing on its own. Like it's making commentary on itself as the show progresses, which is brilliant and smart and much needed. At least in the way I see it.
Yeah, I like that, Mark. And it's purely my Star Trek geekiness that was like, the canon and all this. But that is one of the things I love, that I do also love about this show, is that we get this kind of commentary. And I also thought it was wonderful that she said all that and deleted the log, because I was sitting there thinking they're gonna use this against you. You know, this is gonna come back to haunt you, and she deletes it. And so in keeping with that, the doctor at one point says, prejudice has kept people from helping each other for centuries with no scientific justification. And after we met our neighbors in the galaxy, we found new bigotries. And so I thought that this was very interesting, as you know, and I think it's a commentary on where we are as a society, that we are trying, you know, to break down all of these things that have traditionally been in our way. And even in the midst of trying to break down these barriers and trying to be more accepting of people, that we are constantly also finding new ways to be bigoted towards other people. And I think in some ways that is the human condition, and in other ways,
why do you think it is the human condition? Because I kind of agree with you. Unfortunately, I think it is the human condition. It feels like there's always got to be someone that we're looking down on for made up reasons, essentially. Because once we try to fix one, a new one will pop up. And sometimes, as we're doing right now as a nation, we go back and revisit old ones. We try to we may have buried them, but we're going to unbury them and have, you know, the living dead walking again, the living the dead biases walk the earth once again. I mean, not that they were ever fully dead, but we had at least
they were swept under the rug.
We had at least put them far enough under that we had a chance to progress and do something right. What do you think it is that causes? Because I think we've seen this across the history of humanity. What is it that in us that has this need to?
I think it's in some ways it's like a safety thing, right? That human beings for centuries, they associated with the people who were the most like them, and they were the most likely to protect them and keep them safe. And so in some sense it's biological and evolutionary. And you know, in other ways it's just familiarity. Like, who is it that we're around that we're familiar with and comfortable with? And whenever we meet new people, you know, it can make you uncomfortable. It can make you feel disoriented when you're around someone who challenges you in any anyway. And it can be as simple as the way someone looks. It can be as simple as the way someone speaks or the language they speak that makes you feel like that you're outside of that, or it can be much more complicated than that. But I think the Christian message is that we need to lean into that discomfort. And so that's one of the things that I love about Star Trek, and why people have always seen it as humanistic. And Gene Roddenberry, the creator, was kind of a humanist himself.
Yeah,
but I have always seen it as the gospel. I have always looked at I have always looked at Star Trek and seen it as the gospel. Like, lean in to those areas of discomfort. Try to create this type of world that Jesus called the realm of God, and that Star Trek calls the future.
Right. Well, I don't think I think there's overlap. Like, I've always I've gotten in pretty bad pretty bad trouble for saying I actually think Jesus was a great humanist. Like, a lot of what he taught was really just really solid humanist. So for me, you can say that Roddenberry was a humanist. Great. That means that he's also teaching about the same things that mattered to Jesus, that Jesus tried to make important for us.
Yeah.
And I feel like part of that is that we have to, going back to what we were saying about our long history, and how really what you were making veiled a reference to was tribalism, that we were in small groups and anyone outside of our group represented threat. And so in a lot of ways, humanism, the teachings of Jesus, particularly when I'm stretching for this, I realize that when we do it through the filter of Star Trek, we start realizing that a lot of this is about trying to work against our what some psychologists call our lizard brain, our natural response based on such a much longer time of existence where survival counted on us recognizing people who weren't like us and pushing them away. And I feel like a lot of the teachings that are important to you and I, a lot of the teachings that we see in Star Trek, a lot of teachings that are about humanism really come down to us trying to figure out how to shut that part of our brain off because it's not needed anymore. And it ends up being a better world if we do.
I love that thought, Mark. And that's one of the things that I love about Star Trek is it gives us this vision. And I think in the same way that Jesus did, that a world where we're able to kind of put all of these things that hold us back behind us, and to really focus on the good, that it is possible. And I'm one that thinks that when Jesus was talking about the reign of God, the realm of God, that he was talking about a vision for the future, an alternate vision for the future here, where everyone is given the dignity and respect that they deserve, where everyone has the sense of God's justice. And so I think that one of the main callings that we have as Christians is to try to create that world through the way that we act. So I love Star Trek for exactly that reason.
Absolutely.
I bet you got some questions. Do you have questions for me, Mark? I bet you've got a question that's going to stump me today.
I'm hoping that I have one that stuffs you, because I it is called Make Me Look Stupid. We talked about originally naming the segment Stump Your Co-Host, but that just didn't feel as much fun and like a real challenge as Make Me Look Stupid. So yeah, I think we can do that. Why don't we take this quick break? And y'all, all of you who love to see Caleb with his eyes looking like there's a deer in headlights as much as I do, you're going to love this segment. Tune in just a moment, and we thank you for being here so far.
Welcome back to the Moonshine Jesus Show, and we are here at my favorite segment of the show, where I'm going to try to make Mark look stupid, and we'll see if it works.
He's getting really good at this so far. It's starting to bother me.
Okay, so
I did feel like your lead into this segment was just a setup. Like you were deflecting, like, oh, Mark's going to make me look stupid. And in the back of your mind going, oh, I'm going to make him look stupid.
let's see what I've got here. I am introducing this segment. I do get to ask the first question,
Yes,
so we'll see. All right, Mark.
Here we go.
I want to know, what do you think is the significance of a race called the Illyrians in episode 3? Is there any significance to that?
Wow. Yeah, it's a good question. That is a really good question.
It is. It's a great question.
I wish I remembered more about the Illyrians right now after drinking all of this sorry and
here's what I know about the Illyrians to help you out, Mark.
Thank you.
That they were the neighbors to the north of the Greeks, and the Greeks called any of their neighbors to the north Illyrians. We're unsure if they actually existed or not,
right?
And we don't know all about them. But why did why did the writers choose the name Illyrian?
Right. They choose the name Illyrian because it's a classic reference to other. It's even better that the Illyrians didn't exist or may not have existed, because it was a way of pointing out there something you and I were just talking about in the last segment. Look, those are the others. We must fear them.
So in this, the Federation or the Greeks, they're looking out at the folks who have experienced genetic modification, and they are calling them other, and they're actively discriminating against them. Right. One of the things that we didn't even talk about, Mark, in the last segment is I don't know what we didn't talk about exactly what episode 3 in particular was even. I mean, all the episodes have been so meaty, and
and we talked about 3 a little bit in terms of number 1, that kind of thing.
Right, we did. But was episode 3 also about vaccinations?
It was clearly. It was clearly
about vaccinations, right? As number 1 is able to, as her body develops kind of antibodies, her blood develops antibodies. I think that's even the words they use to combat any illness that they come up with. And ultimately, at the end of the day, they synthesize an antidote from her blood.
If there is anything about this show that isn't my favorite, it's that they are so like nail, hammer, smash, smash, smash. Like there's no subtlety to the message.
It's a little heavy-handed.
A lot of times it's like, listen, for those of you who don't understand, we're going to just spell it out for you.
Get your damn vaccine. It's going to save your life.
If there's anything about the show that's a little bit like, okay, they really are very like, it's not a subtle message when they're talking about morals or imperatives and what makes society better. They are very clearly going to put it. It's barely a parable. I'm going to say that it's barely a parable. Don't you think? Like
I think it is. I like it, but I agree with it, so I'm okay.
Oh, I love it.
I'm okay with it.
Well, I love it. I unfortunately think that we are in a world where we need it to be that direct, frankly.
Yeah, we have beat someone over the head with it. They need it.
We have far too many people in our society that have learned or have bought into not really understanding subtlety. So those are frequently some of the folks that are hurting society. So I do feel like a show like this, if it has any chance of speaking to the people who most need to hear it, being very direct about it is probably a wise choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed. Yeah.
My turn.
You got one for me. I love the way you answered mine. You were good.
Well, only with your help. Only with your help. Only with your help. So listen, here's mine, and I'm just going to admit, it's a little bit of a softball because you're going to have an answer. Yeah, knock it out of the park. Be ready. Knock it out of the park. Just know that once you give your answer, this is my setup, because this isn't ask me a question that makes me look stupid. This is make me look stupid, right? There's a difference there.
So you're going to best my answer? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I'm telling you before you give the answer.
Wow.
That I'm going to give you an answer after yours where you're going to go, yeah, that might be a better answer. All right, so here's my question.
Okay, let me get my Vulcan mind meld or mind probe or whatever this thing
hit
is.
that first.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have a little or the sorry and brandy, but it's really already hit me way too hard because it's mostly just straight vodka. Wow. Okay, here we go.
Okay, I'm ready.
Not just in this show, not just in Strange New Worlds, but in Star Trek. What is Star Trek's most important philosophical tenet?
Okay, so I think that
we certainly have bunches of them.
This is hard. You're right, because there are a lot of philosophical tenets, and so I think that it is about what I was alluding to earlier, that that a different kind of future is possible if only we learn to value each other, and that goes beyond just the each other that we know right now, but it's all the each others that we're going to meet in our lives. And I think some of the best episodes of Star Trek are the ones where we see people coming to that conclusion. And so I think of classic episodes like, in The Next Generation, where Picard is assigned, defending the humanity of Data, the android, and where he is recognizing the humanity even in a machine, and we see this growth, and we see this recognition that there is something, dare I say, sacred in all life, and the various essences that we discover life, and the recognition that our view of life is broader than we've ever imagined it to be. And so that's one of the things that I love about Star Trek, is that and one of the things that continues to pull me in is that it is about our own ability, if we can get past the crap, to create this world ourselves. So Mark, as a minister, that's why I try to preach every week. Like, hey, let's do this, people. We can make this world better if only we try. Okay, so that's my answer. What's your better answer, Mark?
So here's the thing. That was a great answer. I'm just going to say, I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call it out. It was a little long-winded.
No one has ever accused me of being long-winded, Mark. Never.
And no one has accused you of being a liar either, have they? Because I feel like what you just did may have been a little fib.
What you think? You don't think that's true? You think I go on and on? I've never heard. Okay.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying. So listen.
Okay.
I think you really did a great job of giving that answer. I think that there. Yes, of course you did.
Of course.
I think there is a more succinct, to the point way of saying what you said.
Okay. Oh, so you're going to agree with me, but you're going to say
I'm going to refine your answer in a way that you should have. Ultimately.
Okay, well, let's see what it is. Okay.
Ultimately, the most important philosophical tenet of Star Trek is a call to being our better selves. That's what you said. You should a lot more words to say it.
Mark, we're a people of story. You got to tell a story to bring people. So here's what I'm going to say. In order for us to get to your answer, you need in mind. You need the story to get to this distinct point.
Fair enough. And ultimately, though, more important than your answer or my answer or anybody looking stupid or not looking stupid, is that right now in this world, what we need more than anything is a call to being our better selves. We have so much going on in this world that is falling apart and causing pain and suffering for so many people, because there is there are so many folks who are not hearing that call to their better selves. They're hearing a call to their selfish selves or to their self-reliant selves, but not to their better selves. And I do think that that's one of the beautiful things that Star Trek has always consistently done, is call us towards being our better selves.
Yeah, I love that. Let's be better people, and we all can be, and that's part of what we're trying to do. is to do better
absolutely.
with each day. So thanks, Mark. This has been a lot of fun talking about Star Trek Strange
Too
New
much
World.
fun. Too much fun.
And thanks for keeping us from geeking out totally on transporters, because I totally would have lived there.
I hear you. I would have too.
So next week we're going to talk about something that that neither one of us are nearly as familiar with.
So one of the things, one of the things that's trending right now in streaming is a show or a movie called Night Sky. Now, the great news is it stars Sissy Spacek and J.K. Simmons, who are great actor, and always tend to pick pretty good scripts. So we're going to encourage you to watch it. It's got a little sci-fi to it. It sounds like there's going to be some internal struggles with morals and different things like that. So it should be really interesting. You can find it on Prime Video. So we encourage everybody to catch it and watch it before, so that you can join in with the live broadcast and be a part of our discussion.
And then in a couple of weeks, I think we're planning to look at Stranger Things. So we know that that's a show that drops all at once. And the episodes are a little lengthy, so we want to give you a little bit of time to make sure that you've watched all of that. We don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't watched it. So then start watching that as well. So thanks, Mark, for a great conversation. Thanks to all of you for listening in and bringing your Star Trek geekiness along for the ride.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, which, you know, the symbol live long and prosper is a Jewish symbol, right? Because Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner are both
with
Jewish.
his background.
I love it. Yep, that's right.
So listen,
that's right.
So listen,
okay.
I'm going to go out with some music, but I'm going to do it in Pike fashion.
Okay.
Hit it.
Moonshine Jesus, nobody will scare me. Moonshine